This could be one of the most important trading weeks the entire earnings season. And the reason is NVIDIA reports earnings this Wednesday. And whenever NVIDIA reports, we're not just talking about one stock anymore. I mean, NVIDIA is that big nowadays. We're really talking about a company that can really move the market. We're talking about AI. We're talking about semiconductors. We're talking about Nasdaq. And potentially, we're talking about the direction of the broader market being dictated by the NVIDIA earnings. But NVIDIA isn't the only name I'm going to be watching this week. There's Salesforce, CrowdStrike, Ulta Beauty, Affirm, Marvel. These companies are all reporting this week. And on top of that, we have the PCE inflation number coming up with GDP, with durable goods, consumer confidence. And to close out the week, the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, he's going to be speaking at Jackson Hole. So there's a lot of potential market moving catalysts packed in the next 5 trading days. So I'm going to break down everything that I'm going to be watching. So buckle down and let's jump in. Now, first, let's take a look at the temperature of the market. The Fear and Greed Index on CNN, it closed out on Friday with the Fear and Greed Index at 55, basically meaning that it's neutral, right? So it's not extreme fear and it's not extreme greed. We're pretty much in the middle. What's interesting is that that sentiment was up about 67 just over about a week ago. And now it has dropped down to the 55 levels, right? So the optimism has cooled down, but this is not a panic environment as well. The VIX is sitting around 15, which is still relatively low. So in other words, the Fear and Greed Index, what it's basically saying is that investors have become more cautious than before. That's why it's dropped. But volatility says that the market isn't exactly scared yet. And I actually like that type of setup going into the week because the market isn't entering NVIDIA earnings with euphoria, right? But then it's also not entering the earnings terrified. So that means the next major catalyst could actually move sentiment. And like I said in the beginning, there's plenty of catalysts coming up this week. Now, when we look into the economic calendar, Monday is going to be relatively quiet. Then Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, with the consumer confidence and the new home sales. Consumer confidence is expected to be around 91.2 after coming in at around 90.8 last month. So I'm going to be watching whether consumers are becoming more or less confident heading into the fall. But Wednesday is where things start to get serious. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern, we have 3 reports dropping simultaneously. PCE inflation, the second estimate of the second quarter GDP, and durable goods orders. That is a potentially huge pre-market window. So if you're going to be trading on Wednesday, you really want to pay attention to these reports. Why does it matter? Well, because PCE is one of the Federal Reserve's preferred measures of inflation. The first estimate showed the second quarter GDP growing at an annualized rate of 1.5%, down from 2.1% in the first quarter. So we'll also see whether that growth number gets revised materially. And here's what makes Wednesday fascinating. We get that entire macro picture before the market opens. And then after the market closes, we get NVIDIA, along with Salesforce and CrowdStrike. So Wednesday could potentially and could essentially be 2 trading days packed in one. And that brings us into the main event, which is the NVIDIA earnings. Now, NVIDIA, they're going to be reporting their fiscal second quarter results on Wednesday, August 26th, after the closing, right? The company is expected to publish results roughly around 4:20 p.m. Eastern, and then followed by their earnings call at 5 p.m. And expectations are enormous, right? Wall Street is looking for approximately $92 billion in revenue and roughly $2.09 per share in adjusted earnings. Think about that number for a second. $92 billion in one quarter. That would represent roughly 97% year-over-year revenue growth for NVIDIA. But here's the thing. beating expectations for NVIDIA may not be enough. NVIDIA has reached the point where investors expect NVIDIA to beat their earnings. They just expect it, right? So the things that I'm going to be looking for are going to be the following. Number one, data center growth. Last quarter, NVIDIA generated a record $75.2 billion from data center, up 92% year over year. That is the heart of the NVIDIA story. Now, how that would shift in this report, that's going to be something that we're going to be looking to hear. Number two, I'm going to be focused on the forward guidance. NVIDIA itself guided this quarter to approximately $91 billion in revenue, plus or minus 2%. But markets trade the future. So the bigger question may not be what NVIDIA just did in this current quarter. It is really, what is NVIDIA telling us about the next quarter? And currently, Wall Street expectations are already around over $100 billion in sales for Q3. Number three, I'm going to be focused on AI infrastructure demand. I personally want to hear what management has to say about spending from the hyperscalers and the broader AI infrastructure build-out, because NVIDIA has become one of the clearest proxies we have for answering a much bigger question. Is AI spending still accelerating? And then last but not least, Vera Rubin. The market will be listening for updates around NVIDIA's next generation Rubin platform and whether the transition remains on schedule. Now, here's something traders need to understand. Options are pricing roughly 6% move in NVIDIA after earnings. On a company this large, 6% is an enormous amount of market capitalization moving overnight. So I'm not interested in trying to guess whether NVIDIA beats expectations and immediately gambling on direction. I'm interested in the reaction. Does NVIDIA beat and get sold, or does it beat, rise its guidance, and still get sold? Or does the report reignite the AI trade and pull semiconductors and the Nasdaq with it? Because sometimes the reaction to earnings tells you more than the earnings themselves. So that's something that I'm going to be paying attention to. Like I said earlier, NVIDIA isn't alone Wednesday night. Salesforce and CrowdStrike are also going to be reporting. For Salesforce specifically, Wall Street is looking for roughly $11.3 billion in revenue and about 3.27 to 3.28 in adjusted EPS. But for me, the biggest Salesforce question is AI. Can Agent Force actually create meaningful growth? And can Salesforce prove that generative AI is an opportunity for enterprise software rather than something that disrupts traditional software economics? I'll also be watching current remaining performance obligations because that gives us a better look at future contracted business for the company. For CrowdStrike enters this report after producing $1.3 billion of revenue with $5.5 billion in ending ARR. And they also had $256 million in net new ARR last quarter. That's super important. So for CrowdStrike, the ARR growth and the future guidance are probably going to be more important to me than simply whether EPS beats by a few cents, right? Cybersecurity remains one of the strongest long-term technology themes, and now AI security is becoming part of that narrative. So CrowdStrike is going to be one that I'm going to be watching very, very closely. Now, on Thursday, it gives us three more names on my radar. First, Ulta Beauty. Ulta Beauty reports after Thursday's close. This gives us another important read on consumer spending, particularly discretionary spending, right? Women who are going to buy makeup, all that stuff. I'm going to be watching comparable sales, margins, and guidance. Beauty has historically shown resilience compared with some other discretionary categories. So I want to see whether that continues. The next one that's going to be on my radar is Affirm. And Affirm reports its fiscal fourth quarter on Thursday after close. Affirm gives us, a different consumer signal. Instead of asking what consumers are buying, what we're going to be looking at is how consumers are financing what they're buying. right? Are they still using the buy now, pay later model with Affirm and other firms? So I'll be paying attention to the GMV growth, credit quality, transaction economics, and profitability. Because if household finances are becoming more stretched, a company like Affirm can sometimes give us clues before that stress becomes obvious everywhere else. So I'm going to be paying attention to Affirm. And finally, Marvel. This one is particularly interesting because Marvel connects directly back to the AI infrastructure story. Management guided second quarter revenue to approximately 2.7 billion, which could represent about 35% year-over-year growth. Its data center business, AI interconnect products, and custom silicon programs are what I'm going to be focused on. So NVIDIA tells us what is happening at the center of AI compute. Marvel gives us another perspective on what's happening around that compute infrastructure. So that makes Thursday a useful confirmation or contradiction of whatever NVIDIA tells us Wednesday night. So that's why I'm going to be paying attention to this company. Now, Friday is going to be all about Jackson Hole. And the week isn't over after the earnings, right? So Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard, the Fed chair is scheduled to deliver his keynote address at the Jackson Hole Economic Policy Symposium. Markets will be listening for clues about inflation, interest rates, and where the monetary policy goes next. And remember what happened Wednesday, right? We will already have received fresh PCE inflation and GDP data. So by Friday, the Fed chair will be speaking with those numbers sitting directly in front of him. At almost the same time, we will get the final University of Michigan consumer sentiment data with the Chicago PMI shortly before that. So Friday morning could easily create another volatility window. So here's the week. Tuesday is going to give us a first look at the consumer. Wednesday morning gives us inflation and GDP and durable goods. Wednesday night gives us NVIDIA, Salesforce, and CrowdStrike. Thursday gives us Ulta Beauty, Affirm, and Marvel. And Friday gives us the Fed at Jackson Hole. But out of everything happening this week, as we all know it, and it goes without saying, NVIDIA is the main event that I'm going to be watching most closely. Not because I think we need to predict whether NVIDIA beats or misses the market, right? That's not important. The market, I believe, is already expecting incredible numbers. What I'm going to be more focused on is what happens after those numbers hit. Because if NVIDIA delivers another blockbuster quarter and the market can't rally, that tells us something. And if NVIDIA delivers, raises expectations again, and money moves aggressively back into semiconductors, that also tells us something too. So this is a week where I believe patience matters. Let the catalyst happen, let the market show its hand, and then trade the setup, not the headline. I will see you guys in the charts, and glad to be back after having taken a little bit of time away from YouTube, but getting back into things. So expect more videos like this every week. I'll see you guys on the other side.